All right, let's talk some college football with our buddy Josh Pate at Late Kick Josh, 24/7 Sports. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline with the city of Nashville over his right shoulder. What is up, Josh Pate? How are you?
It's mostly just a reflection off the Regions building, but a fact remains, downtown Nashville. I decided to take you guys to the office instead of irresponsibly using that sketchy Wi-Fi signal I have at the apartment, so I leveled up for you.
Well, that is so nice of you. You told me not long ago you could see Losers when we were at Losers from your office. So it's through that window that you can actually see Losers Bar, huh?
I can see so many Losers from here. You would not believe how many you could see.
He was just talking about
I bet
us.
you could look out right now at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday and see a pedal bike.
Look, and so the noise. So for those of you who know Nashville, Broadway's a block away. Then there's the area called Printer's Alley, which is like right below where I'm sitting right now. And some things happen on Printer's Alley. And anything that happens down there, as I'm waving a fork at you instead of my index finger, the noise reverberates up this building behind me. And there's a guy about 2 nights a week, probably like north of Kenny G in terms of saxophone aficionados. And he sets up shop down here. So there are nights after we do Late Kick where everyone's supposed to be going home, and I'll just prop my feet up on this desk right here, maybe grab a nice bowl of oatmeal, as I am wont to do, and I just listen to him play. Unfortunately, these windows don't open. I know why they don't open, but they're interesting sounds that emanate from this alley behind me.
So we were talking Deion Sanders earlier. He had some interesting sound talking about names that he did and did not know on his team. What is your expectation for Deion? And I know year one's not fair. Their offense was completely awful last year. But in the next 3 years, do you think Colorado is going to be a team that contends in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. There are a lot of things I think they'll do that there's no case study for, because there's a lot going on today that we don't have historic precedent for. So it's useless to me to look back for historical context. You will not find it. They won 1 game last year, as you said. So anyone who's watching this, I'm going to go ahead and get you ready. I'll give you one spoiler for this upcoming season. The talk around Deion in Colorado is just going to be like the most intellectually bankrupt talk there will be. I think we talked about, actually, when you guys were in Nashville, I think we talked about this, because what's going to happen is they won 1 game last year, okay? So any of us who say they're going to be better, that doesn't mean we think they're going to contend for the Pac-12. 3 wins, 4 wins would be a great year for them. But as sure as you say that, someone else out there is setting this false bar by saying they're not even going to make a bowl game. Well, both of those things can be true. Yet every time they lose a game this fall, there's going to be this voice that comes from the nether regions of Twitter. It says, I told y'all he was a fraud. I told you he was a fake. Well, buddy, he was a 4-touchdown dog to USC and just lost by 17. What are you talking about? They'll put their fingers in their ears. They don't care. So 2 years, 3 years from now, I think they'll be a contender, because, guys, I don't think we will have seen a roster overhaul in the history of college football like we will see. Southern Cal, ironically, Southern Cal is as close to doing what we will have seen in history. They just did it last year. But we saw them get Shedeur Sanders out there. Here's what I think will really spike the entire market. If they go and they get their Caleb Williams, if there is a high-profile quarterback transfer that opts to go to Colorado in the next 2 years, that's when everyone will say, oh, okay, well, now I got to take him seriously. But this year, I don't care how many games they win. He is already winning in different areas, because you can't use the Georgia playbook at Colorado. The Bama playbook doesn't work there. You've actually got to sell Colorado. Kirby and Saban don't have to sell Georgia and Bama. And he's done that. He's sold out their spring game. We're talking about him right now. You're sitting in Birmingham, Alabama. We're talking about him. So they've got some wins off the field. On the field, yeah, I think they'll eventually come.
I don't want to treat James Franklin and Penn State like they're a third-party candidate in a political race for the Oval Office, but it has seemed like it's been Ohio State and Michigan, and then Penn State gets mentioned. I feel like that's about to change, and I feel weird feeling that way because they just lost a long-time starter at quarterback, but you were just there. Do you get the feeling that as good as Michigan and Ohio State are, that there's something cooking in State College?
Yeah, I do. It won't be because Michigan or Ohio State fall off, though. So it's a very important note you mentioned there. It's got to be Penn State rising to meet them. And I know conventional wisdom were to tell you, hey, when you lose a quarterback who started 14 years in a row like Sean Clifford did, then maybe there is a suspected drop-off. it's in totality. That's the reason you should buy into Penn State this year. So I had a lot of suspicions before we went up there, and they opened the entire program, spent 2 days there, got to watch closed practices, got to talk to anyone we wanted to. So got to use the gym. They haven't even opened it and showed the public yet. So I saw everything I could see. Point being, I don't think they've ever had a defense under Franklin, the caliber that they will have this year. They were able to get Manny Diaz as coordinator, keep him for a second year, had a great conversation with him. I think this is serving both parties very well, him being up there. But also, because they don't have major question marks, because they're so solid defensively, because they've got a great 1-2 tandem in the backfield at tailback, because they got 5 guys with 30 game starting experience across the offensive line, including the first-round left tackle that decided to come back, and you didn't see him in the spring game. Because of those things, the new quarterback doesn't have to hang 40 a game. He doesn't have to step in and shoulder the load. So they can afford to sort of, if you will, ease him into things. They don't have a front-loaded schedule. So the team you see at the beginning of the season, I actually think may look a little shaky offensively. And it's going to fool some people because they're going to back off Penn State. They're going to buy into them in preview magazine season. Then they're going to back off when they don't hang 60 on West Virginia. And then that's when the real Penn State will start to show itself. And they got the backloaded portion of the schedule with all the big boys. I think it's going to be an absolute knife fight up there in that division.
After talking to Manny Diaz, how much did he need a break from Southern football? His footprint has been in the ACC and the SEC, a little in the Big 12 at Texas. How much of a break did he need from Southern football to sort of rejuvenate his love for the game?
Well, I thought he was going to take a break, period. I told him, we were talking before we did some stuff on camera. I said, I can't believe that you jumped right back into coaching last year. Because if you'll remember, it was pretty contentious the way it ended at Miami. And it was like one of those situations where everyone else knows you're going to get fired before you know. Everyone else is told. Everyone has a source, and you're in the dark. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the way it got handled. So he gets fired. And then I thought, since he is very well spoken, he's really good on camera, I thought he was going to go do media. And you know my thoughts about coaches. No coach ever has his stock drop when he does media.
Right.
It's the Dan Mullen effect. It's the John Gruden effect. And so I thought he was going to be great at that. Then all of a sudden, he takes the Penn State job. Well, I asked him, how in the world did you decide to do that? He said, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought what you're saying was going to be true. I thought I may go do media. All those opportunities were on my plate. And then he said, James Franklin called me. And the more he pitched me on it, the more I realized that, yeah, I think I'm a good defensive coordinator, but they've got really, really good culture up there that lends itself to a good defensive coordinator shining, which is an important point.
Right.
And he just phrased it in a way I hadn't thought about it before. A lot of people think if your defense sucks, the answer is just go hire a really high-profile defensive coordinator. And he said sometimes that happens, and mysteriously the results don't change. And it's because no matter who the coordinator is, and maybe no matter who the personnel is, the culture does not lend itself to it, which is something to watch with USC, by the way, if they make a defensive coordinator change in the future. So anyway, he goes in there. They don't miss a beat. He's never shown an ounce of burnout. Everyone swears by him there. If you walked in and didn't know any better, half the folks would think he's the head coach just by the way people talk with such reverence about him. So he's going to be a head coach again in the near future. I think in the meantime, though, there's a lot to be learned, as he said, from watching another guy and working for another guy after you've been a head coach.
At Late Kick Josh on Twitter, 24/7 Sports is where you watch Late Kick, and go follow him on YouTube and all those things that we ask you to do for us. Do the same exact stuff for Josh. He is on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I saw that Army is apparently going away from the triple option, which I think, Josh, I think that kills the triple option in college football. I don't think anybody else is running it. And with the passing of Mike Leach, I don't know how much longer we'll have air raid. Which one would you fight to keep in college football, air raid or triple option?
Well, I always thought a lot of the concepts, a lot of the blocking concepts, the triple option, if we invented football today, would not be allowed in the game. Now, I know I have offensive line coaches in my family. I just hope they're never listening to me when I say this sort of thing. I know how it's received, and I know that they can explain it to you as if, well, if it's done properly, it's legal. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not arguing the legality or not. I'm saying I think we would create the rules a different way, because there are a lot of guys who have knee injuries on legal blocks, in other words. And I think that, a lot of people have noticed that. So It doesn't surprise. I guess it does mildly surprise me that Army's going away from it, but I think it's in maybe reaction to knowing where the rule changes and where the game's going overall. I'll be interested what that does to service academy football, quote unquote. Not that they were ever competing on some national level or anything like that, but it did set them apart. It did differentiate it. You knew when I turned on an Army game and I've got my sister or my girlfriend here, I could always say, hey, sis, or hey, babe, watch this. Watch what they do that's totally different than anything else. Paul Johnson, Georgia Tech, that was the same way back in the day. I think we're just going to have to pull up YouTube clips at this point to show people that.
It's sad, but there are some RPOs that are basically some of the concepts. So we're not losing it totally. But I understand about the safety of the game. That's a great point. I think we would have created a lot of rules differently, and we wouldn't all be screaming they're taking the toughness out of football like we are now if we'd just created the game a little differently. I saw with Michael Penix Jr., and you're a national guy. We talked to a lot of SEC people. You're a national guy, even though you're based in Nashville. He says, let me get this right, the expectations is for us to compete for a national championship at Washington. Listen, I understand as an athlete, you want to be the best you can be. Whatever you do, you should be trying to be the best you can be. Is that a realistic goal for Michael Penix Jr., having what Washington put on tape last year?
The national expectation is not that. It is absolutely reasonable for their expectation to be that. Here's the reality. Not a lot of people watch Washington nationally. It's not just a Southern thing. Not a lot of people on the West Coast watch Washington. I don't know, and I only know this because I had to do a deep dive on them the other day. I don't think people realize how close they were to making the playoff last year. They went 11-2, 10-2 regular season, I think. They had 2 losses by less than 1 possession. They were right there, and you don't think about that. You think about USC, Utah, Oregon. That's really how your mind processes Pac-12 football if there's going to be anyone to be taken seriously. And Michael Penix, look, we're talking about how great a story Jalen Hurts is right now, and it's one of the best stories football's ever told. But in the little microcosm college football year-to-year world, Michael Penix last year, no one, including me, really batted an eye when Washington picked him up because he was injury-prone and he was turnover-prone, and he went to Seattle and did none of those things and was a Heisman contender. He's in the top 3 odds for the Heisman this year, and they're only getting better. Kalen DeBoer is an unknown commodity as a head coach, but there are a lot of folks on the West Coast that don't get too deep into a paragraph about the conference before they mention them, not just in 2022 terms, but they mention Washington and Kalen DeBoer in the longer term narrative. And here's my focus. So USC's not involved, UCLA's not involved. They've already signed off to leave the conference. But as these coaches start elevating, Smith at Oregon State's another one. Jed Fish at Arizona may be one. What are these coaches, Dan Lanning certainly is one, what are these coaches that start to get a high profile do if the future of their conference becomes more and more murky? Because I think there may be a coaching market, a little secondary coaching market that's created simply because of things outside of those coaches' controls and outside of even those individual universities' controls. And so Kalen DeBoer, stock rising, Dan Lanning, stock rising. You got guys out there whose stock is rising. And who knows if that media deal underwhelms and if the future of the sport continues to morph into this big 2 and everyone else, you may see some shocking coaching headlines over the next 3 or 4 years.
That'll be interesting. Do you have another all-immersive school that you're going to this spring and summer like you did Penn State? Because I love the coverage from up there. And I hope you tell me Nebraska is one of them. We'd love to see you inside Matt Rule's rebuild of that program. That would be a great trip for you.
We got a meeting actually today about that. So the blessed portion of where we sit is we have people come to us now. And especially once we can put out what we did at Penn State, we could pretty much go wherever we want. So the answer is yes. I think Nebraska is on our radar. I have not solidified anything with them, but we've got a number of them on deck. I think we'll probably be visible in South Florida in the not too distant future. I want to go places where there are big questions. It's good to get to the perennial contenders. I want to go places where people look and they say, oh, that'll be interesting. I wonder if he'll ask about this or that, because the entire context under which we're going to these places is an understanding that, yeah, we're going to ask you about that.
Well, you can see more by following him on Twitter at Late Kick Josh. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, 24/7 Sports. I was at a family function Saturday. My mom's cousin was there, lives in Columbus, Georgia, and he asked me how our show was going, and he said, you know who I watch all the time? I said, who? He said, I really like Josh Pate on 24/7. He's a Harris County guy. So you've got at least one fan in Columbus. I don't know if anybody else in Columbus likes you, but my mom's cousin does.
I will be in Harris County, Georgia after the show tonight. I'm driving down there. I'm speaking at my college Thursday. And I'm a guy who was on academic expulsion in college at one point. So this is like the Jalen Hurts underdog story of college. I'm doing a commencement speech at Columbus State University, and that is worth a fork wag.
Indeed. That is a heck of a comeback. Columbus from academic suspension to commencement speaker. You don't do that one very often. Well, congrats on that. Good luck on it. Thank you, Josh. Always fun.
Thanks, guys.
All right, buddy. Josh Pate with us at Late Kick Josh. Go follow him. Support everything he does there. He was on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.